Breaking live right now on Capitol Hill, the director of the Secret Service, Cheatin' Cheadle, is getting grilled by Republicans and even a couple of Democrats. We're going to give you the latest from that hearing and her non-answers and deflections and lies coming up in just a moment. Plus, Joe Biden, as you know, stepped down from the candidacy for re-election. But is there something more at play here? Is he, in fact, terminally ill? His own brother suggests so. And we'll give you all those details and the ugly backlash. Kamala Harris is trying to steal that nomination away. How will she do it? And what does that process look like? And is any of it fair? And what about Robert Kennedy Jr.? He had plenty to say about her. We've got that plus, Morning Joe. We love those guys. And they're in absolute war stance right now against any Republican who dares to say anything about Kamala Harris. All that coming up right now. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Thank you all for joining us on this historic Monday in your nation's capital and across the country and around the world, for that matter. We appreciate all your support. And if you joined us for our live breaking update version edition yesterday, when we heard the news, we are happy to say that we beat the New York Times, Washington Post. We beat the networks with our breaking live video coverage and analysis right here on the platform you're watching. That's right. We were up and webcasting, broadcasting, streaming within 13 minutes of Joe Biden's announcement. And we are thrilled with your support and your encouragement for what we're doing here. You make it happen. And thank you so much for all of the likes and the subscribes and the shares. We are chugging along here like nobody's business. And that brings us to today's events on Capitol Hill. The director of the Secret Service was called under oath to answer questions about her department's abject failure, 100% total collapse of systems, procedures, and protocols in the Secret Service. They have a zero tolerance policy at the Secret Service. They have no room for error. Failure is not an option, and they failed. They failed with this assassination attempt just 9 days ago. And the woman in charge of the Secret Service, she did not provide any kind of confidence to anyone questioning where this department is headed. Take a look at some of the highlights and lowlights.
Budget of around $3.1 billion, and I believe around 8,000 employees. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Obviously, there were many security failures on the day of the attempted assassination and leading up to that day. Let's start with the building that the shooter used to shoot President Trump from. At any point Saturday, did the Secret Service have an agent on top of that roof?
Sir, I'm sure, as you can imagine, that we are just 9 days out from this incident, and there's still an ongoing investigation. And so I want to make sure that any information that we are providing to you is factual.
You can't, okay. Why did the Secret Service not, can you answer why the Secret Service didn't place a single agent on the roof?
We are still looking into the advanced process and the decisions that were made.
Okay. Wasn't that building within the perimeter that should be secured? Do we agree with that?
The building was outside of the perimeter on the day of the visit. But again, that is one of the things that during the investigation, we want to take a look at and determine whether or not other decisions should have been made.
All right. Now, a couple of things here
Budget
noteworthy. By the way, I hope you recognize the fact that she didn't want to answer any questions. I hope you recognize the fact that she keeps saying that there's an ongoing investigation, but who's conducting that investigation? She's conducting that investigation. It's an internal investigation that the Secret Service is conducting of their own failures. Oh, and the FBI. Don't even get me started. You heard at one point when she would not answer the question as to why the Secret Service didn't have somebody on that building, you heard the reaction. That was from the other Republican congressman already just 3 minutes into this testimony, frustrated that she's not going to answer any questions. How is it 9 days after this botched assassination attempt? I'm sorry, botched Secret Service attempt to protect President Trump. How do you not have at least the fundamental answer to that question? But there was one revelation there at the end. when she revealed that this building was not within the Secret Service perimeter. This is a building that was less than 150 yards away from the protectee with a clear line of sight for a sniper, as we've now learned. And they decided not to have that building within the perimeter. That's a decision, and there should be a very clear paper trail as to who made that decision. And she should have that name right now for this hearing. And she didn't have it, or she chose not to share it. Now, there is a whole lot of obfuscation here, and I know that you're going to get frustrated, but it's still incredibly revealing to see what questions she decides to dance around and not answer. And that's what we're going to show you right now, a little bit more from Chairman Comer.
One of the things that you said, I believe, in an interview, that there wasn't an agent on the roof because it was a sloped roof. Is that normal? And do you fear that immediately creates an opportunity for future would-be assassins to look for a slanted roof? I mean, this is a huge question that every American has. Why wasn't a Secret Service agent on the roof? And there have been reports that agents were supposed to be on the roof, but it was hot that day and they didn't want to be on the roof. Can you answer any of those questions, Director?
So I appreciate you asking me that question, Chairman. I should have been more clear in my answer when I spoke about where we place personnel in that interview. What I can tell you is that there was a plan in place to provide overwatch, and we are still looking into responsibilities and who was going to provide overwatch. But the Secret Service in general, not speaking specifically to this incident, when we are providing overwatch, whether that be through counter snipers or other technology, prefer to have sterile rooftops.
9 days later, and she can't give us an answer, at least on the sloped roof debacle. And Comer makes a pretty good point here. You see, she's asked very specific questions about what they did, what decisions were made, and what the protocols were with regard to this obvious abject failure in protecting President Trump. And 98% of the questions asked of her, she says, well, I don't want to get into that because that would reveal our methods, and we certainly wouldn't want to give any sort of would-be assassin any insight into how we make our decisions. And yet she was more than willing during a softball interview with CNN or ABC News to say, yeah, well, you know, that's a sloped roof and there's a safety hazard there. Thus, ding, 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 alerting any would-be sniper an insight into this ridiculous idea that a sloped roof would prevent a Secret Service agent or sniper to take perch or have a position on it. It was a ridiculous answer that she gave, but it actually defies what she claims is the reason why she can't give answers today. Okay, so why were you okay giving an operational answer to ABC News, even though it was a stupid, erroneous answer, but you're not going to give us Congress answers in our oversight capacity? And can I repeat, it's been 9 days. She should have some basic answers to these questions. Otherwise, what the hell is the point of this hearing? And I'll tell you right now, the point is to reveal exactly how inept Kimberly Cheadle is. And let's be clear, she is a political appointee. Oh, I know. She was career Secret Service, but then she decided to leave when Donald Trump was elected. She decided to leave and take a corporate job, and she was only brought back as a political appointee because Jill Biden, the First Lady of the United States, liked her and had a relationship with her. That's the definition of a political appointee. Why is the director of the Secret Service a political appointee? Damn good question.
Within the perimeter that should be secured. Do we agree with that?
The building was outside of the perimeter on the day of the visit. But again, that is one of the things that during the investigation, we want to take a look at and determine whether or not other decisions should have been made.
All right. That was a repeat video, but I just wanted to have it in there for emphasis, I guess is the best way to put it. Because the fact that that building, as you can see from this chart provided by Fox News, that building where the shooter's location was outside the perimeter is insanity. Absolute insanity. And it doesn't take an expert to figure that out. All right. More here from Kimberly Cheadle.
How many Secret Service agents were assigned to President Trump on the day of the rally?
Again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the numbers of personnel that we had there, but we feel that there was a sufficient number of agents assigned.
Now, after the fact, to say that we feel there was a sufficient number of agents assigned is absolute insanity. And one other aspect of this, Susan Crabtree, a reporter for Real Clear Politics, has been fantastic on this story. She broke late last night that Chuck Grassley had an internal email at the Secret Service. And let's be clear here. There were stories and reports from moments after this assassination attempt from people within Trump's inner circle. I heard it personally from people inside Trump's inner circle that they had been requesting extra detail and extra personnel for holes that the Trump security people saw in the Secret Service plans, and it had been denied, that their requests for extra Secret Service duty had been denied. The Secret Service denied that. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas denied those claims. And then 7 days later, this weekend, Washington Post and New York Times both confirmed that, yes, in fact, the Secret Service had denied requests for additional personnel. We'll get into that in a moment with Jim Jordan's questioning of Ms. Cheadle here. But what Crabtree has uncovered from Chuck Grassley's latest memo is remarkable. The day of this event in Western Pennsylvania, in rural areas outside of Pittsburgh, Donald Trump's security detail at an outdoor event with thousands and thousands of people, they were given only 3 agents to stand on a stand post. In other words, these are areas where a Secret Service agent gathers and secures the area before the magnetometers are even brought in, the bomb sniffing dogs, all of that stuff. They secure the area and they stand post on that area to ensure that nothing breaches that area and no one else comes in or goes out. That would have prevented this from happening. And they only had 3 of those agents assigned. On the exact same day in Pittsburgh, just miles away from the Trump event, First Lady Jill Biden had her own political event going on, and she had 13 of those agents on her detail. And as much as I think the First Lady should be protected from harm, she is not in the constitutional chain of command. And the man who was president and now is the leading candidate for president maybe should be a higher priority for security details. And now here's Director Kimberly Cheadle of the Secret Service refusing to answer basic questions about the number of personnel that were there. Why? Because it's politically damaging. That's why. They're going to bury this truth as long as they can because they know how ugly it looks. It looks like decisions were made from Joe Biden to Alejandro Mayorkas to Kimberly Cheadle, all 3 political operatives. It looks like decisions were made that put President Trump in harm's way. And so they're going to bury it. They're going to hide it. But what she said here is sufficient to have her fired immediately.
Of personnel that we had there, but we feel that there was a sufficient number of agents assigned.
They feel that there was a sufficient number of agents assigned when we know for a fact that they didn't secure this building where the sniper was. They didn't have the agents to do it. They relied on local law enforcement to do it for them. And that resulted in a bullet gouging out the ear of President Trump, coming a quarter inch away from hitting his skull. And she still thinks, yeah, I'm standing by our decision. All right. That brings us to more questioning of Kimberly Cheadle. We've got plenty to get through. This is from a Democrat on this oversight committee.
Director Cheadle, as you know, the shooter began shooting at 6:11 p.m. Eastern on July 13th. NBC reported that at 5:51 p.m., 20 minutes before the shooting began, the state police informed the Secret Service of their concern. Now, the rally was not paused at that point, correct?
No.
And according to NBC, just 2 minutes later, at 5:53 p.m., the Secret Service notified its snipers about the gunman. The rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
No.
Let me show you some video footage by rally goers. If you could play the video on the screen up here. This was taken 2 minutes before the shooting started. If you could turn up the volume.
Dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals. We have we have people that
Right
should not
here,
be here.
right on the roof.
It's much
She's
tougher
standing
than
up now.
it happens.
You went right on the roof with that.
Up here.
Ma'am, that doesn't look like suspicious behavior. That looks like threatening behavior to me. And the rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
I can tell you, as I stated earlier, sir, that the moment that the shift surrounding the president were aware of an actual threat,
That's a threat right there. The guy's on the roof and everybody's yelling at him
yes,
and directing the officer's attention to him. The rally was not paused at that point, correct?
we are currently still combing through communications and when communications were passed.
Well, I can point you to this community.
Again, I'm sorry. We'll let this finish because it's important and compelling questioning. But 9 days. There are certain fundamental questions that you should have answers to already at this point. Otherwise, what in the hell have you been doing? One of the questions is, hey, guys, and we saw this video within hours of the assassination attempt. So you're the director of the Secret Service, and you see these videos that are showing civilians who were there saying, hey, there's a guy on the roof, and they're telling police that. So you're the director of the Secret Service, and don't you have, as maybe one of your top 5 questions, hey, what did these police do, and who did they communicate to with the fact that they saw a threat on the roof? I want an answer to that. I want an answer now. Partly because you know you're going to be asked that question under oath from the House Oversight Committee, but partly because it's your freaking job to have that answer. And she still says, oh, we're still combing through communications. This is how conspiracy theories are born. And frankly, in my opinion, you have every right to leap to the worst conclusions because they're doing nothing to quell your fears that they're either A, grossly incompetent, or B, willfully negligent. This is disgusting. By the way, real fast, I just want to clean this up because I work without a script. The people who were assigned to Jill Biden's detail, they're called post standers. They stand post. And really quickly, the description here, thanks to a write-up at the dispatch. Agents are assigned posts at a certain location, which will be on a security plan diagram. That on the day of the event, the post standards arrive several hours before even the personal protection detail arrive, and they do a bomb sweep of the venue. After this, these agents, who are both inside and outside the perimeter of the event, both inside and outside the perimeter, will remain at their post for the duration of the event. Those are post standards. For the Trump event, thousands of people outdoor with a perimeter that had this building outside the perimeter, they were assigned 3 post standers. 3. This is from the internal Secret Service email that Senator Chuck Grassley released last night. At the Jill Biden event for the First Lady in Pittsburgh, just miles away from this event, they were given 13 post standers. You cannot look me in the eyes. You cannot look the American people in the eyes and say that priorities were given and a higher priority was given to the First Lady at her event. And I'd love to see that event and how big it was and how many thousands of people were there and whether it was in a controlled space versus an uncontrolled outdoor venue like this. But the priority was given to First Lady Jill Biden, who got this woman her job. And the priority was not given to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. All right, more on this questioning here.
Communication is 2 minutes before the shots started ringing out. Director Cheadle, yes or no? Was there ever a moment where the Secret Service actually considered pausing the rally?
The Secret Service would have paused the rally had they known or been.
So the
told
answer is
there was
no.
an actual threat.
The answer is no. Correct?
I can speak to you in generalities.
No, I don't want generalities. I
know
want
all of the
specifics.
communications
The
that were-
answer is no. You did not consider pausing the rally, correct?
The people that are in charge of protecting the president on that day would never bring the former president out if there was a threat that had been identified.
Well, they did, because we've now identified 3 points in the 20 minutes before the shooting that the threat emerged.
Yeah, that's right, that the threat emerged, although she went on to say, oh, no. This guy wasn't identified as a threat. He was just identified as suspicious. I kid you not. That's her answer. All right, we got more. Let's get to Jim Jordan, who had a pretty great exchange, multiple exchanges with this woman. Again, what's more important here is the questions that she's not answering, because it reveals everything about where this so-called investigation, this internal investigation that I'm sure we're all going to have great faith in, where it's going.
So which is it? Because both statements can't be true. Were you guessing or lying when you said you didn't turn down requests from President Trump's detail?
Neither, sir, and I appreciate the question.
Well, what were you doing? Because those statements don't jive.
So what I can tell you is that for the event in Butler, there were no requests that were denied. As far as requests,
Well, maybe they got tired of asking. Maybe you turned them down so darn much, they said, not worth asking. How many times did you turn them down ahead of that?
I think that it is important to distinguish between what some people may view as a denial of an asset or a request.
Well,
That's
Mr.
not-
All right, so it's important for me to jump in here because I want to make sure that you have the context, because Congressman Jordan began this series of questions by pointing out the fact that reports came out from the Trump team that they had asked for more Secret Service details at various times and they were denied. Then the spokesperson for the Secret Service denied that that ever happened. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kimberly Cheadle's boss, denied that any requests for additional Secret Service had been denied by the Secret Service and Homeland Security. And then a week later, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they revealed that, in fact, requests for additional security were denied by the Secret Service. And that very same spokesman that denied it a week before conceded over the weekend that, yes, there were requests, plural, requests for additional Secret Service that had been denied. So he's saying, okay, were you guessing or were you lying? And now look at how she does whatever she can to deny the premise of the question itself. Well, you know, some people might mistake a denial for security to just a reimagination of how security should be employed and bullshit like that. And Jordan stays on her, and she will refuse to answer this question. But this is the key. This is the critical aspect of this. This woman should be fired immediately, but the only people who can fire her are the people who know exactly what's wrong here, and that's Mayorkas and Biden. It's not going to happen. If she had any dignity, if she had any moral turpitude, she would resign in shame, but she won't. She won't, because, you know, being a Democrat means never having to say you're sorry.
Guglielmi, your spokesperson? He said he acknowledged the Secret Service had turned down some requests. I'm asking how many?
A denial of a request does not equal a vulnerability.
Well, tell me what it is.
There are a number of ways that threats and risks can be mitigated with a number of different assets, whether that be through personnel, whether that be through technology or other resources.
Well, tell the committee which it was. They asked for additional help in some form or another. You told them no. How many times did you tell them no, and what did you tell them no to?
Again, I cannot speak to specific incidents, but I can tell you in general terms, the Secret Service is judicious with their resources based on.
What does some requests mean? How many times? Some indicate requests is plural. So more than once they asked for additional help and you turned them down. What did they ask for and how many times did you turn them down? Pretty basic questions.
So again, without having all of the details in front of me, sir, what I can tell you is that there are times.
You didn't get briefed on how many times you turned down the Trump detail when they asked for additional help?
I'm sorry.
You didn't get briefed on that before you came to this hearing, knowing you were going to get asked that question?
What I can tell you is that in generic terms, when details make a request, there are times that there are alternate ways to cover off on that threat or that risk.
But that's not what he said. He said they were denied certain requests, some requests. This is your spokesperson, not me talking. This is the Secret Service talking.
Yeah, it went on for a while, and you get the gist of it. And good for Jordan for laying out. See, here's the key here: you don't let them filibuster. You interrupt them and keep pressing them on the issue, because he says, "How many times did you deny their request for additional security?" And she said, "Well, a denial does not mean that there are increased vulnerabilities." Well, nobody frickin' said that. Nobody said that your denials led to vulnerabilities, although it's pretty clear that there was a vulnerability there, madam. But the question is very simple. How many times did they request additional security and how many times were they denied? And she claims she doesn't have those details. That is incredulous to say the least. She either is a moron or she willfully said, don't tell me that because I don't want to say it under oath. So don't give me those details. Just give me, broad picture information. So when I go under oath, I don't feel compelled to give details because I have to answer truthfully. So truthfully, I'll say, oh, I don't have that. I can just talk about big umbrella sort of overview terms. I can't get into the granular. And that's what happens here. This is how they do these things. It's lying without lying. She then made the mistake of saying that she's sitting there trying to answer questions, and that did not end well for her.
Who's all doing the investigating at Secret Service? I know the Inspector General, but is there also an internal investigation in addition to the Inspector General?
We are conducting a mission assurance investigation internally, yes.
You know what it looks like, Director? It looks like you won't answer some pretty basic questions. It looks like you got a 9% raise and you cut corners when it came to protecting one of the most important individuals, most well-known individuals on the planet. A former president, likely the guy's going to be the next president. It looks like you guys were cutting corners. That's what it looks like to me.
That's exactly what it looks like because that's exactly what they did. But they only cut corners in certain areas. They only cut corners in the security detail for the man that they have spent the last 10 years calling Adolf Hitler. And now that they're in power, they've spent the last 3.5 years saying that he is an existential threat to our democracy and to our Constitution, and that if he is allowed to be president, that'll be the end of our nation, and that he must be stopped at all costs. That's the guy they cut corners on. That guy. Now, we've heard the story about this person, this would-be assassin, having a rangefinder in this area, which seems kind of suspicious. And she went at great lengths to explain how that's not a prohibited item, even though, I can't get on an airplane with freaking toenail clippers. But a rangefinder is fine when you're going to an outdoor event with unsecured buildings and President Trump there giving a campaign appearance.
Hey, Larry, we lost audio on this. Can we refresh the screen share?
Oh, yeah. Hang on. I don't know why we would lose. I don't know. Oh, hello. Where did I go? Look at that. Ooh, that's pretty fun, isn't it? Do you like it when I just disappear like that? Where'd Larry go? And if you're really a keen observer, you'll see that my red cup moves from the shelf. Look at that. The red cup's up there. Now the red cup's down there. It's fun with video. Sorry. All right. Hang on. Let me get this up. This is Congressman Lynch asking about the rangefinder. Are we good now? We're good. No, we're not good. Oh, no, we're good now. All right, let's go.
Did he have a rangefinder? There were some reports that the individual had a rangefinder. That would certainly raise my suspicion. Did he have a rangefinder?
Yes, he did, but may I explain that at a number of our sites, especially when you're at outdoor venues, a rangefinder is not a prohibited item. It is sometimes an item that is brought in by individuals if you're going to be in
did
the back.
anybody confront him on that? Anybody ask him questions? What are you doing with the rangefinder? Anybody confront him on his presence where he was in proximity to the president?
So again, to my knowledge, I believe that was the process that was taking place, was to locate the individual.
Did they confront him? Did they go up to him? Did they talk to him?
I do not have those details at this time.
Those are important.
Yeah, those are important details that you should have gotten in the 9 days you've had. What the hell is she doing? Let's not forget she was at the Republican National Convention having some sort of hospitality suite for local law enforcement who have helped out for the security in Milwaukee. But what is she whining and dining local law enforcement? Get your ass to Washington, get your ass to Butler, and do your freaking job. 9% raise, woman. 9% raise. I love that too. Hey guys, I need a raise, man. It's really expensive. Have you been out there? Have you tried to fill up your car with gas recently? Well, you got a 3% raise. That's typical. No. It's way too expensive under this Bidenomics. Okay, we'll give you 9%. That's how the conversation went. If you watch this, you're probably frustrated. You're probably saying, why in the hell doesn't somebody just start screaming at this woman or screaming profanities and start calling her out? Well, eventually somebody did. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, South Carolina.
My first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter? Yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question. Yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible.
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent? Yes or no?
I have always been.
Yes
eager to
or no?
come
You didn't
and
want to
talk
answer the
committee.
question. We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political? Yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. First question.
Thank you, Nancy Mace. Little Citadel action seeping through there. And by the way, she's right. That is shit. That's 100% bull. And by the way, the question wasn't who leaked it. The question is, was it political to leak this ahead of your statement and before you actually delivered it to the committee? And the only answer to that is 100%. Yes, it is political because that's who she is. By the way, all of the calls for her resignation today from Republicans, they were not alone. Democrat Ro Khanna had a great moment with Kimberly Cheadle, and I want you to see it because Democrats who step up deserve it. They deserve their moment.
Director Cheadle, would you agree that this is the most serious security lapse since President Reagan was shot in 1981 of the Secret Service?
Yes, sir, I would.
And, do you know what Stuart Knight did when he was in charge at the time of the Secret Service? Do you know what he did afterwards?
He remained on duty.
He resigned. And Stuart Knight was not a Democratic appointee or a Republican appointee. Look, I'm not questioning your judgment.
I am questioning her judgment, and Ro Khanna with a devastating moment. Yeah, this is the biggest failure of the Secret Service since the Reagan assassination attempt. And what did that Secret Service director do? And this moron, he stayed on duty. No, he resigned. He resigned because the Secret Service has one job, and failure is not an option. And this is an abject failure. But listen, this is the Biden administration. This is the Democrats. There's no such thing as failure. None at all. All right. Now, you may have heard that Joe Biden has removed his name from the process of being the Democrat nominee for president. You know what? Let me try this again. Let me start this over. Because ultimately, we don't know if Joe Biden has actually removed his name from being the Democrat nominee for president, right? I mean, what we know is that a letter has been presented to the world on a social media account that is not run by Joe Biden. It's run by one of his staffers. And we know on that same account, he has endorsed Kamala Harris to be the Democrat nominee for president and eventually the president of the United States. But nobody actually has firsthand knowledge and verification that Joe Biden has, in fact, written the letter that we've seen and authorized its distribution. So any news agency that's saying, yes, Joe Biden has written, no, you don't know that firsthand. You're just taking their word for it. It would be great to actually see Joe Biden and have him confirm it firsthand. Not that he has a functioning brain at this point anyway, but more accurately, Kamala Harris is now theoretically in line to ascend to the throne of the nomination for the Democrats for president of the United States. And Mika and Joe this morning were Johnny on the spot to make sure that anybody who dares to criticize the brilliance and political genius of Kamala Harris is called out for what they really truly are: hate-mongering racists.
You can see how quickly they tried to steal the unity narrative. And I've heard from inside Republican circles and right-wing media that the hate campaign against Kamala Harris has begun. You'll notice they purposefully pronounce her name wrong. They say Kamala. They do it all the time. It is on purpose. But the talk is to start that hate campaign and get it going and start it churning. So my hope is that major Democrats and major Republicans, from the Obamas to the Bush family to military leaders, get behind the democracy ticket and we move on. You can see.
Okay, this requires a bit of a fisking. We've got to break this down stanza by stanza because this is Mika at her greatest. Let's begin here at the beginning.
How quickly they tried to steal the unity narrative.
The unity narrative? Are you kidding me? Obama didn't endorse her. Gavin Newsom hasn't endorsed her. Nancy Pelosi hasn't endorsed her. What unity narrative? I love that there needs to be a unity narrative at all, by the way. This is the democracy dies in darkness kind of party that says that the people must have a voice. Listen, I don't know who the nominee is going to be for the Democrats, but I can tell you one thing I know for certain. The voters, the citizens, actual Democrats will not have a say in this. Only a small handful, a few hundred, maybe 1,900 total, will actually have the final say as to who the nominee is. So the unity movement needs to be adhered to, right? And who is it that's trying to destroy the unity movement? Listen to this.
And I've heard from inside Republican circles and right-wing media.
Who in Republican circles and right-wing media is talking to Mika Brzezinski? I've heard in Republican circles and right-wing media. Oh, I guess she must mean Mitt Romney and the Bulwark. Republicans, nobody's talking to you, Mika. Oh, she has so many sources in right-wing media. Yeah, I have no doubt. I have no doubt that Tucker Carlson talks to her on a regular basis. There's more. It's so brilliant.
That the hate campaign against Kamala Harris.
A hate campaign. You know what that hate campaign against Kamala Harris consists of? Playing Kamala Harris videos, showing you Kamala Harris in her own words and in her own cackle, for that matter. What can be unburdened by what has been. That's the hate campaign. How dare you show us Kamala Harris actually speaking for herself? How dare you quote Kamala Harris verbatim? That's a hate campaign is what that is. We're back to cheap fakes again, guys. That didn't take long.
Has begun. You'll notice they purposefully pronounce her name wrong. They say Kamala. They do it all the time.
All right, let's just take that one up right. Well, actually, you know what? We'll get to the mispronouncing of Kamala in a moment.
It is on purpose, but the talk is to start that hate campaign and get it going and start it churning.
Hate campaign.
So my hope is that major Democrats and major Republicans, from the Obamas to the Bush family to military leaders, get behind the democracy ticket.
So she wants the Bush family, the Obamas, and military leaders to get behind the democracy ticket that will be chosen without the benefit of democracy, without the benefit of one citizen casting a vote. That's now the democracy ticket. And she wants the Bush family, the Obamas, and military leaders, because, you know, that will quell any suspicions that there's a deep state uniparty military industrial warmongering complex in Washington, D.C. trying to cram Kamala Harris down your throats. Yeah, there's nothing more pro-democracy and pro-populist and pro-voice of the people than the Bush family, the Obamas, and military leaders uniting behind Kamala Harris being placed on the ticket without the benefit of any votes, and then they're going to call it the democracy ticket. That's just beautiful. And let's get to Kamala and the pronunciation of her name, because we've been hearing this for 4 years. Remember when Tucker Carlson mispronounced her name and we were told it was racist? We remember.
Tucker, can I just say one quick thing, because this is
Of
something
course.
that will serve you and your fellow hosts on Fox. Her name is pronounced comma, like the punctuation mark la, Kamala. Okay?
Okay.
Seriously, I've heard every sort of bastardization
so
of
what?
that. That's how it is, Kamala.
Okay.
Well,
But
I think it's out of respect for somebody who's going to be on the national ticket. Pronouncing her name right is actually not, it's kind of a
So
bare
I'm
minimum. That's all.
disrespecting her by mispronouncing her name unintentionally. So it begins. You're not allowed to criticize Kamala Harris or Kamala Harris or whatever
Kamala. No,
because
no, no, it's
Kamala
No, it's
Harris.
not whatever.
Okay, look, I unintentionally
basic.
mispronounced
Let me
her
answer your
name,
question.
but I love the idea that she's immune from criticism. So let me restate my question,
Let me
because
answer
on
the-
this
no,
show,
no,
nobody
I got
in
it.
power is immune from criticism. Our political leaders must be held to account. That's our job. People of sound mind and body have a responsibility to get it right. So do your duty. If you see someone else mispronouncing Kamala Harris's name, you need to intervene and call them out for hate speech. And bonus points if you get them fired or post their license plate on social media. We all share in this responsibility. And with that in mind, we have some footage to show you now. It's from one of Kamala Harris's stops last weekend in Cleveland. Again, Kamala Harris has been on the scene for several years now. You should know how to pronounce her name, so listen very carefully.
Hey, Cleveland! It's Kamala. I just came to say thank you.
Hey, Cleveland, it's Kamala? Okay. There are dog whistles, and then there are foghorns. That was a foghorn. That was racism and sexism combined in a repulsive little Reese's peanut butter cup of hate.
Oh, God, I do miss the nightly Tucker on Fox News, and so does Fox News, I assure you. Yeah, there was Kamala apparently mispronouncing her own name, and that's racist. It's disrespectful. It's undermining, and that's what Mika Brzezinski is now calling the hate campaign against her. But, you know, Tucker's not the only one. Kamala's not the only one. What about Justice Sotomayor swearing her into office as vice president?
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
So it's not Kamala, it's Kamala. See, I'm confused now because Sotomayor said Kamala and she said Kamala, right?
Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris.
Okay. See, okay. So now which one's getting it right? You know what? Let's go to the man who hired her in the first place. No. Not Willie Brown. No. I meant most recently hired her. That would be Joe Biden. I'm sure he knows how to pronounce her name.
That's what I asked Kamala. I asked Kamala to be the last voice in the room.
Hold on. It was Kamala or Kamala? By the way, I wonder if that last voice in the room was, all right, close your eyes, Joe. Here comes the pillow for your face. This will be over soon. That was the last voice in the room. That's fine and good. That's how Mika began Morning Joe today. Then it got even more insane. I kid you not. James Clyburn, the man who single-handedly not only won the nomination for Joe Biden in South Carolina in 2020, but demanded that Kamala Harris was the nominee. Well, technically, he didn't demand Kamala Harris was the nominee. James Clyburn wasn't picky. He just said it has to be a black woman because, you know, it's all about merit and skill and something.
And so I think all this foolishness about him not being able to serve out his term is craziness. It's a big difference in running the government and running the campaign. Joe Biden was not up to what it took to respond to sound bites when you're trying to solve problems around the world. He is a great problem solver, and I believe he will go down in history as one of the best and most consequential presidents we've ever had.
Yes, I do love that they keep using the word consequential. Well, there were definitely consequences to the Biden presidency. You can't deny that. That was Obama's word that he used. consequential presidencies. Definitely, we're still feeling the consequences. I believe we will be continuing to feel the consequences for many years to come. But there you go. There's no reason why he can't run the country. He just can't respond to sound bites on the campaign trail, guys. But sure, he can show up for work today. Although, did he show up for work today? He didn't show up for work today, but I'm sure he'll be fine later in the week. Joe Scarborough then took up a brand new political argument for Democrats and the left. You're going to love this. They're not hypocritical at all.
The fact they're freaking out so much has to excite a Democratic Party that was really at its lowest ebb of any party that I've seen since, let's say, Watergate.
The entire theory of the case from the Trump campaign, and it's literally on signs, is strength versus weakness. Right. Donald Trump is strong. He just survived an assassination attempt. Joe Biden is old and weak, the argument goes.
Right.
Now, that's off the table. You have Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, who presents, I mean, you talked to Democrats last night, sort of imagining again that debate on June 27th, what it would have been like if Kamala Harris had been standing there, and the softballs that were coming across the plate, the lies Donald Trump was telling, what she would have done with those and now will do if there's another debate.
Well, and age becomes...
real fast, the strength versus weakness is not off the table because Kamala Harris is 100% weak, and she owns every single weak decision and policy that the Biden administration has inflicted upon our country and upon the world. So, and by the way, what campaign and what convention have these guys been watching? Biden's age was very rarely brought up during the convention. No, actually, the Republicans ran, and Donald Trump has been running a very clear campaign that is almost entirely about the disastrous policies that this administration has put forth. It's because they knew they were quite possibly going to have to run against Kamala Harris. In fact, Donald Trump said almost a year ago in an interview with Cheryl Atkinson that he didn't think Joe Biden was going to make it and that he would be running against Kamala Harris. So this has all been about policies, and Kamala Harris has to own those policies. But that's okay. Willie Geist, the newsman at the table, you know, he's not there for opinion. He's there just to report the facts. He's going to continue to lie on behalf of the party because, well, that's what the MSNBC viewers expect at this point.
Becomes an issue now because he's 20 years older? I think
he's now officially, now that Joe Biden is out of the race, he's now the oldest major party nominee in the history of the country. And as we've all pointed out, has shown many signs of mental slippage. And, you know, you would think at this point, with Joe Biden out of the race, we could all now focus on clearly and cleanly on another elderly gentleman who may be not fit for the job. If the standards apply to Joe Biden are now to apply to Donald Trump,
20 years older than her. He's 20 years older than her.
Hey, guys, age is an issue now. It's okay to talk about somebody being too old to be president. Now that Biden's gone, bring it on. Now it's okay to talk about it. We're Morning Joe. We're a news show. It's pathetic.
Yes,
he's 20. So
almost 20, yeah.
Almost 20 years older, and that's I think one of the reasons why Republicans are melting down because suddenly he's the old guy in the race by a long shot.
Yeah, and they tried for the unity message, which worked for how many days at the convention? 4.5 or something like that. And then the back half of Donald Trump's speech that night on Thursday completely ended that. If you want to go watch another speech, his event on Saturday.
Oh, boy.
All the way back to the old Trump.
Yeah. Oh, was it really?
And he was complete. And this is on Saturday, right? So he's completely freaked out about what may be coming down the pike. There was no sign of this alleged new Donald Trump, which none of us bought, of course.
You know what bothers me more than anything else beyond the bias on behalf of Biden and against Donald Trump and against Republicans and against you, the voters, which is, you know, you take that for granted. What bothers me more than anything else is how absurdly amateur they are and how, what political campaign are they watching right now? This constant refrain that Republicans and the Trump campaign are melting down and freaking out over this. Do you see that? I don't see that. I see confidence. I see swagger. Let's face it. Donald Trump just defeated Joe Biden without a single vote being cast in the election. And now he gets Kamala Harris, who is less popular than Donald Trump and who owns all of the policies. And if you can find one singular policy that defines Kamala Harris's role in the Biden administration, I mean, it goes without saying, you know what it is. She was the border czar. The border, which is the single greatest debacle for the Biden administration. No, this is great. And the fact that Biden stays in office actually makes it easier to run against Kamala Harris because she's not an incumbent. Think about it. If Kamala Harris is so good, why would Joe Biden have to stay in office? Why not just step down and let Kamala take over? She's just that good and competent and wonderful, isn't she? It just bothers me that they're that bad at what they do, these guys. But their audience doesn't know the difference because this is all they watch. We're smarter because, see, we've been surrounded by left-wing media bias our entire life. We can see right through it. We know how the left thinks. They have no idea how we think because they never expose themselves to us or our ideas. They are kept in a protective little bubble, and all they hear is left-wing talking points all the time. We would love to live in that kind of bubble where it's just right-wing talking points, but that bubble doesn't exist. You can't live your existence in American culture without being surrounded and inundated no matter where you go, whether it's in the music business or the movie business or late-night television or regular sitcoms on television or pop culture or in academia or in your corporation that you work for because of your quarterly DEI exams that you have to take. We are inundated all the time with left-wing talking points. So we know who they are. They have no idea who we are. And so they can get away with sitting there on national television on MSNBC saying, oh, the Republicans are melting down. They're freaking out. No, nobody over here is freaking out, guys. I assure you. But keep that up. Oh, and by the way, one other thing, this whole idea of Trump being too old. Now that Biden's gone, we can talk about how old he is. Well, it wasn't long ago. In fact, it was just, a few hours ago when Joe Biden's age and his mental incapacity was actually a charming aspect of who he was as president. Don't believe me? Well, believe these guys.
And I love what he's done for the country. He had authenticity and touch, whether you saw it or not, but everything about him, even sometimes the stutter and the bumbling was part of the touch, part of the sort of empathic, very loving, very clear-eyed touch that he had that allowed him and enabled him to be an effective president. But all of that turned against him after the debate for all the reasons that we discussed. And he would say, no time to complain about it. Let's move on. It's go time.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, no, there's plenty of complaining going on, trust me, behind the scenes. But yeah, there you go. See, we just had a segment where Joe and his little roundtable, not including Mika, which is notable, talked about how Trump is old and he's infirmed and he has signs of mental incapacity and that he stumbles and he slurs. And there's Mika saying, when Biden stumbles and slurs and stutters, it's part of his charm. It's part of what made him great. You can't make this stuff up. And finally, Caitlin Collins over on CNN. She tried this as well with Scott Jennings, an absolute beast right now. It's honestly the only reason to tune into CNN, if there is a reason to tune into CNN. She pointed this out with her arched eyebrows and smarmy little smug attitude. Donald Trump is now the oldest candidate.
Trump is now the oldest nominee that we've ever seen in U.S. presidential history. Trump is now the oldest nominee that we've ever seen in U.S. presidential history. Trump is now the oldest nominee that we've ever seen in U.S. presidential history.
Just play it on a loop because that's what you're going to hear over and over and over again. It's beautiful. It's great. It's wonderful. It's freeing to be a Democrat. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? And the elephant is not a Republican, it's a Democrat. The elephant in this case is Joe Biden's health. And the fact that we have all seen for years and years and years the deterioration of this man mentally and physically, right up until the point where his last public appearance was getting onto and off of Air Force One when he was supposedly diagnosed with COVID. This was on Thursday of last week. He canceled a campaign event in Nevada, even though the crowd had already assembled in the room where it was supposed to take place. He got on Air Force One with his COVID positive diagnosis and flew not to the White House, where he would have 24/7 medical care right there in the White House facility near his residence. No, he went to Delaware, to his home there, to recover. And the last we saw of him was he was barely capable of getting into the SUV after Air Force One. He needed Secret Service agents to lift his legs to get him into that back seat. We haven't seen him since. The next thing we hear, after hearing his surrogates out there all weekend saying he is in, he's not going anywhere, he's got campaign events scheduled next week, and then inexplicably, out of the blue, we get this letter posted on his Twitter account, on his X account, and he's out. He's done. Then CBS News reported that they had spoken to the president's brother, not James, the one who's quite possibly facing major jail time for his corruption in the federal government. No, his brother Frank. You don't hear about Frank much. Here's what Frank Biden told CBS News.
CBS News had a brief conversation with Frank Biden, one of President Biden's two younger brothers. And here's what he told us. He said, "I'm incredibly proud of my brother. Selfishly, I will have him back to enjoy whatever time we have left. He is a genuine hero. Country over self. It sounds corny in our cynical political environment, but he nor I are cynical. The goal remains the same: defeat Trump and continue the work that Joe has done. My hope is that our party rallies around this heroic act." We asked him whether he feels that his brother's overall health and vitality played a major role in this decision, and he says, "In my humble opinion, absolutely." So a member of the president's family now confirming that the president's health was indeed a major factor in this decision, and calling his brother a hero for making the decision to pass the torch to Kamala Harris.
So Nancy, sorry, can you clarify that the family is saying his health was or was not a factor?
He's saying that in his humble opinion, yes, the president's health and vitality played a considerable role in his decision. It's important to note, Frank Biden is not speaking for the family writ large. This was simply a conversation between CBS News and Frank Biden. Unclear how much input he had in this decision, but he says that he believes that his brother's health did play a role, and he says that the goal remains the same: to defeat Donald Trump.
Well, that is notable because to date, the family, the White House, the establishment has rejected the premise that there was anything that was challenging the president's mental acuity or his health, and that all these accusations were baseless, that it was just age and a few, difficult nights like he had on the debate stage. So that is a change in message.
It is a change in message, and don't let yourself off the hook there, honey, because you and all of your colleagues in the media, all of you professional corporate legacy media types with your journalism degrees, which are oh so valuable these days, you bought it hook, line, and sinker. You never asked challenging questions. You never probed. You never actually reported on what you saw with your own eyes. We all saw it. We knew what was happening, and you never did. And now you dare to sit up there and say, well, this is a very different story here, what we're hearing from the family, or at least this one family member, Frank Biden. But listen again to this one part of the statement that he gave to CBS News, because it's jarring language.
Officially, I will have him back to enjoy whatever time we have left.
Whatever time we have left? Who says that about a man who isn't terminally ill? Yes, he's 81 years old, but if he's not suffering from any actual medical condition, why would you use language like whatever time we have left? Unless he's dying. I mean, we're all dying, but I mean, dying. Now, within hours of this report on CBS News, Dr. Jill and Hunter and other people surrounding the president with their hair lit on fire. They made sure that everybody knew that Frank Biden does not speak for them. Actually, let me rephrase that. It wasn't Dr. Jill, and it wasn't Hunter, and it wasn't anybody in the Biden family. It was the White House staff, who wanted to do damage control on this idea that Joe Biden isn't anything but the healthiest man you've ever seen. He rides bicycles after all, doesn't he? So they picked up the phone and called CBS News toot sweet and said, that Frank Biden guy, you can't listen to him. But then they went further. Watch this.
We got word, Nora, from the president's brother earlier today saying that the president's health, he believes, was a factor in his decision. But just a short time ago, I heard from a source close to the Biden family, and they said that Frank Biden, the president's younger brother, is an alcoholic, that he hasn't spoken to the president in weeks, and that the president's health had nothing to do with his decision to leave the race.
Dude, don't mess with the Biden crime family. You step out of line, and this is what they do to you. Frank Biden says that it was definitely the president's health that was a factor in this decision, and he went on to say that he's happy that he'll be able to have whatever time left they have together. What's that all about? Oh, Frank? You mean that drunk bastard? That drunk son of a bitch? That drunk motherfucker? Oh, no. You can't listen to a word that guy says. Boom. Oh, the Biden family. They're so tight. They're all full of love. They're America's family. I give you my word as a Biden. Oh, really? Like Frank Biden? Oh, no. Not that Biden. He's a drunk motherfucker. Yeah, you can't listen to him. Don't take his word. His word as a Biden doesn't count. All right, so let's break this down for a minute, shall we? I dabbled a little bit in this earlier, but this is noteworthy. So Joe Biden, last time he's seen publicly, he's leaving Nevada last week after getting diagnosed with COVID-19. But the last words out of his mouth is, I'm not going anywhere. I am in it to win it. I've got the delegates. In fact, when challenged and said, listen, there are elder statesmen in the party who are saying that you can't win, you should step down. And what did Joe Biden say about them? Oh, those elites. I never listened to the elites. These are the same people who said I couldn't beat Trump. These are the same people who moved me out of the way to make way for Hillary. Last I checked, when they had their way, that's how we got Trump. These are the things that were said either by Joe Biden himself or on his behalf over the last several days. And by the way, you know who he's talking about when he says that? That's Barack Obama. They're not friends. They're not friends. The whole thing has been a charade. Charade? You know what I mean? This whole idea that Obama and Biden are bros is bull. And when Biden comes out and says, these elites, is there anyone more elite in the Democratic Party than Barack Obama? No. The answer is no. All right. So then the next thing we know, he gets shuffled off. He's got COVID. He's canceling all of his campaign appearances, and he's going to recover in Delaware. Not in the White House, where he's got a medical facility. Nope, he's going to Delaware. He's going to his home in Delaware. Then the next thing we know, this letter is produced. Now, there's some notable things about this letter. Let's blow it up here, if we could. Thank you. First of all, it's not on White House letterhead or letterhead of the office of the President of the United States. And it's also not really on letterhead at all. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you have to write, who writes formal letters anymore or prints things, right? Everything's done through email. And so if you actually have to print out a formal letter, like a letter of recommendation or something, you have to go to Google Docs or Microsoft Word, and you have to create letterhead. That's what this looks like. This looks like somebody went to Microsoft Word and went up into the header and did a nice fancy font and put Joseph R. Biden Jr. as if this is his personal letterhead. Listen, it might be his personal letterhead. I'm just saying that's what it looks like. And then they wrote this letter that is clearly a letter that came out of a political communications shop. This is not a personal note. This is not a from the heart thing. This is a litany in 2 paragraphs of all the great work that they've done in the Biden administration, including, and I would like to say, it's notable that it says they have the strongest economy in the world. How does that feel? Does it feel strong to you? Historic investments in rebuilding our nation, in lowering prescription drug costs for seniors, and expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. You know that health insurance and health care costs more than it ever has. It costs 10 times more than it did when Obamacare was passed, but, you know, Obamacare. And we've provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances. You start listing out your achievements, and this is the best you can do in your very first paragraph describing what a great presidency you've had. That's not saying much. But then you finally get down to the nuts and bolts of it. Listen, while it's been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. Let me just tell you something. I don't think this was written by Joe Biden. Now, he may have approved it. Don't get me wrong. He may have approved it. But I don't think he wrote this. And I'll tell you why. Because Joe Biden, at the very least, is a very smart and savvy politician. He doesn't have a whole lot going for him. But I think he has one skill set. And that one skill set is that he knows how to bullshit. Oh, I forgot to there. You know what I mean? He knows how to lie. That's his skill set. He knows how to say the right thing when he needs to say the right thing. And Joe Biden, knowing what to say and what not to say, would have never, ever, ever said what I just read he is supposed to have said. Did you catch it? Let me read it to you again, and let me see if you can catch what I caught. I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. Did you catch it? Joe Biden, if he had written this himself, would never have put party literally in front of country in that paragraph. He never would have done it. I'm telling you. Now, he may have approved this letter, and he may have looked at it with blurry eyes or drug-addled eyes and missed that and didn't give him a correction. But in my opinion, that is a smoking gun right there. That this was, shall we say, a collaborative effort. Can we say that? Can we at least say this was a collaborative effort? All right. So you've got that part of the letter that is suspicious, to say the least. And then you've got the signature. Now, a lot of people have pointed this out, that this is definitely an automated signature, right? He didn't sign that, because I'm telling you, his hands right now are way shakier than this. We've seen it. But the underline, everybody's pointing to the underline. And who in our chat room, the live chat, just said that that's not his signature, because this is being analyzed across the board. KJ Scott, well said, well spotted there on YouTube. He doesn't underline his name when he signs his name. People have been looking; they're trying to find instances where he underlines his name. And this, am I going on a limb here, Kevin, with this? Because I've been trying to search for it, and I've been seeing tons of people, credible news sources, saying, yeah, this is not how he usually signs his name, right?
No, I think you're right. I've seen a handful of examples of people showing screenshots of his previous signatures, and it's never underlined.
Right. It's never underlined. Even the automated signature little machine thing that they use. All right. So... So this thing gets produced. And I just want to be clear here on all the news reporting, and we've done it too, because it's a natural thing to do. We've done it on the town hall sites. The natural thing when reporting this story is to say that Joe Biden has stepped off of the Democrats' ticket, and he has decided that he's not going to run for president. But that is technically not true. That is technically not true. Because we don't know firsthand from the horse's mouth that that is the case. If you want to really accurately report this story, the way to accurately report it is to say a letter purported to be signed by and approved by Joe Biden was released on Sunday that says that Joe Biden is removing himself from the candidacy for president. That's the accurate thing. And then moments later, he endorses, excuse me. See, I just slipped into it. I slipped into it. Moments later, his social media account on Elon Musk's X platform that is managed by staffers at the White House, that account puts out a post that purportedly has Joe Biden endorsing Kamala Harris. We don't know firsthand that Joe Biden has done this. We also don't know if First Lady Jill Biden is on top of this. Her account, also managed by other people at the White House, reposted Joe Biden's letter, the letter purportedly from Joe Biden, and the First Lady's account on the repost just had a heart emoji, and that's it. And now, this is a man who up until just a couple of days ago was saying, what the hell, I got 14 million votes. I'm not going to disenfranchise Democrat voters. I'm sticking with the nomination. I'm the man. I'm in it to win it. And nothing leading up to this at all suggests that this was in the cards. It's curious. Kyle Becker had a great recap here. Joe Biden suddenly resigns via X. White House staff find out a minute later. That's right. The White House staff didn't even know about this. The campaign was still making calls for donors when this happened. Joe Biden resignation letter, not on official letterhead. Biden's signature underlined is suspect. Steve Ricchetti helped write the letter. Let's move on to that now. Steve Ricchetti. Hang on. Here we go. Steve Ricchetti. This is from Jackie Heinrich of Fox News. Ran into Steve Ricchetti tonight as he was getting out of an elevator. I asked, are you okay? Is he okay? Ricchetti says he's okay and said, with a slight nod and a tight smile, kept walking. Ricchetti helped Biden write his withdrawal letter in the overnight hours. So Biden was up. Biden's pulling an all-nighter. Weren't we told that Biden doesn't function well past 4 p.m.? And now he's doing an all-nighter while suffering from COVID? I don't know about you. When I had COVID, I was really tired. I was out of it. Overnight hours, according to the New York Times, Biden did not notify his vice president. He did not notify his campaign manager. He didn't notify his chief of staff until the morning. And the rest of his staff didn't find out until a minute before he posted the letter to social media. Okay? Joe Biden tweets the heart emoji, we're told, but technically, actually, it was just her account that tweeted it. We don't know who actually did it or who approved it. The White House wiped Biden's schedule for the rest of this upcoming week. White House Chief of Staff called the cabinet and manages the comms. Frank Biden confirms there's a health factor, and then the family suggests Biden may have a terminal illness. Then Joe Biden holds no live press conference. There's no still photograph even of him authorizing this letter. We have not seen the man since he stumbled out of Air Force One and got placed into the SUV. Chief of Staff Zients. Chief of Staff Zients managed the communication across the anxious administration, holding calls Sunday afternoon with the cabinet and senior White House staffers. This is not how these things are supposed to go down, especially when the grown-ups are in charge. I mean, these questions all demand answers because none of this is normal. This has literally never happened. They're going to look at Lyndon Baines Johnson. I saw somebody comparing him to George Washington, by the way. When George Washington relinquished control of the Continental Army. Can I just stop you for a moment? There's a big difference between Joe Biden and George Washington. And that is leading up to the moments before he relinquished command of the Continental Army after winning the Revolutionary War against King George. George Washington was not saying to everyone around him and to the media, yeah, I plan on being king. I should be king. I just defeated the King of England. I'm in charge of the army. I've got the army. They're under my command. They'll do what I tell them. Of course I'll be king. I'm naming myself king. I'm going to name myself king. And then inexplicably, he relinquished control of the army. No, that's not how it went down, dudes. There's also a big difference with Lyndon Baines Johnson. Lyndon Johnson made this move way early in the year before any of the primaries took place. And he announced it in a live television broadcast to the nation. And he said why. He gave a reason. Lost in this entire story and in this entire letter that we're supposed to believe Joe Biden wrote or at the very least authorized, lost in all of it is one missing element. Why? In this letter, Joe Biden never says why he's doing this. That seems like a critical element to this story, doesn't it? And where are the journalists? Journalists, last I checked, are supposed to, at the very least, focus on the basics, the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why of a story. And boy, there's a whole lot of W's that are coming up empty on this one. But we're told that we should just believe the regime and move on. One more quick Kamala Harris moment in all of this, if we could.
Our president, Joe Biden, wanted to be here today. He is feeling much better and recovering fast, and he looks forward to getting back on the road. And I wanted to say a few words about our president. Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. In one term, he has already, yes, you may clap.
This was about an hour ago at the White House where Vice President Harris is conducting official duties at the White House since Joe Biden is incapable of being there due to his health, recovering from COVID. So this is her first big debut, sort of filling in the big guy's shoes. Oh, did I call him the big guy? And she has to have a please clap moment. And then she laughed, which is always good. Kamala, keep being yourself. Just be genuine. Be natural. Laugh as much as you possibly can. It's a winner. All right, which brings us to now, what does the next 30 days look like for the Democrats? How do they actually choose their nominee? I can tell you this much. It will not involve any voters. Yeah, this is democracy without any voters' voices heard. Now, I'm not a Democrat, but if I were a Democrat and if I were a liberal and I cared about my values, I cared about my principles, I cared about what I claim to stand for, I would actually be looking at this guy. This guy right here. He wanted to run in a primary. He's a lifelong Democrat, for crying out loud. His name is Kennedy. He even looks like a Kennedy. He looks exactly like his dad, Robert F. Kennedy. But he was squeezed out of the party process so that they could force Joe Biden down every Democrat's throats during the primary. And now they're negating even that selection from 14 million voters. And maybe if you're an actual principled Democrat who believes what you claim you stand for, you might want to say, hey, let's welcome Bobby back. Well, yesterday, he responded to some questions about Kamala Harris, and I want you to see what he had to say. Because again, put yourself in the shoes of a Democrat. Why wouldn't you want this guy?
You compare yourself to Kamala Harris if she does become the Democratic nominee for president?
Well, I think, Kamala Harris is the party of war. She's a war hawk. The Democratic Party was always the peace party. Kamala Harris is a war hawk on Ukraine. She's a war hawk on China. I think that we should be figuring out ways to coexist with the rest of the world as best we can. Of course, we need to protect our national security. I think she's not going to do anything about the national deficit. I've never heard her speak about the chronic disease epidemic, I think she's a product of the corporate control of our democracy. And she's one of the authors of, in terms of civil rights, she has one of the worst civil rights record of any public official. She's the author of one of the primary authors of the school to prison pipeline. She kept 5,000 people, despite a Supreme Court order that she released 5,000 prisoners of nonviolent drug crimes who were illegally in California jails. She kept them in there saying that we needed them for firefighting and for other public work services. And that's just a modern version of indentured servitude, a modern version of slavery. She was one of the two leading public officials in California, which now has the worst education system, 49th in education outcomes in the country. 50% of the homeless people in our country are in California, and she was behind those policies. I don't think she has a good, I don't think, in terms of the traditional democratic principles, I don't think she has a credible record.
And that's an understatement. Let me tell you something. And if anyone from the Trump campaign is watching, I know who you are. If Kamala Harris demands a debate with Donald Trump, you should insist on two things. Number one, you should insist on the exact same rules you had in the last debate because it served Donald Trump bigly. You should insist, okay, fine, but we're going to do the exact same rules as the last debate with the mic getting shut off and the time and all that stuff, no audience, all that stuff. And number two, Bobby Kennedy's on stage. Demand that. Say, you want a debate? Fine, but none of this one-on-one stuff anymore. I've already beaten your guy one-on-one. You want to have a debate? Let the American people actually get a choice here. Let's have Bobby Kennedy on stage too. That would be a brilliant move. And trust me, Kamala Harris wants that debate. It serves them much. They need it more than Donald Trump needs it. And what will the process look like exactly? Well, Jen Psaki, who is a Democrat, lifelong Democrat operative, and formerly the White House liar-in-chief, spokesperson for the Biden White House. Before that, worked for the Obama White House. Before that, worked for the John Kerry and Hillary Clinton State Department. Her entire job is as a Democrat operative. So that's why, of course, naturally, she is an analyst and host for MSNBC because they're not in the news business. Jen Psaki revealed quite a bit about what this process looks like. Accidentally. I don't think she meant to say what she said here.
But now the DNC and the Democratic Party has to run, they're going to run a process, is my understanding. And the process is going to be, the goal of it is to make the vice president look strong and be strong at the end of the process. So that means that's what we're going to see over the next couple of days. We'll learn a lot more about what that looks like.
What kind of a process? I mean, like a competition?
I'm as confused as Rachel Maddow about this. You would think that the process that the Democratic Party was about to engage in would be a process to determine who the people in the party, the voters, the members of the party, the ones who are supposed to be represented by their delegates at the convention, who they want to be their nominee, since their first choice has now been tossed under the bus. You would think that the process is to determine the best person that accommodates the needs, desires, and hopes for Democrats. But that's not the process they're about to engage in. The process, as Jen Psaki said, was to make Kamala Harris to look strong. All right, guys, we're a political party, and we've just lost our nominee. So now we got to engage in a process to prop up Kamala Harris. Shouldn't we have an open process where people can sort of compete for the nomination and give speeches and rally support and say what they stand for and maybe let the people have a say? Nope. The process is, what's the process again, Jen?
But now the DNC and the Democratic Party has to run, they're going to run a process, is my understanding. And the process is going to be, the goal of it is to make the vice president look strong and be strong at the end of the process.
Okay. Well, that's one way to look at democracy. But it seems like democracy has been severely threatened by the Democratic Party here, doesn't it? Democracy dies in Delaware, my friends. Democracy dies in Delaware. Meanwhile, over on ABC News, they have their own Democrat Party apparatchik and hack. That would be George Stephanopoulos. He's basically Jen Psaki, but 3 decades ago, and he's still got his job there. In fact, he's risen up the ranks at ABC News. So, Jen Psaki has a real opportunity to become the Sunday anchor, the morning anchor on Today's Show, perhaps. Here's George Stephanopoulos doing the party's job this morning.
And John, in the end, President Biden really had no choice. It's almost as if in the days since the debate, the Democratic Party held another primary.
Absolutely, George.
Hold on. No, it's not almost as if the Democratic Party held another primary, because a primary is where voters actually get to go and vote. I mean, you could argue that the Democratic Party never even had a primary at all because there were no debates. And the one leading candidate that had the best shot, Robert F. Kennedy, was excluded from events and told that if he tried to run in the New Hampshire primary, that his delegates would actually be stolen away from him. And now, it's almost like the Democratic Party just held another primary. Really, I got a question for you, George. Who exactly is the Democratic Party? When you say the Democratic Party just held another primary, who exactly are you talking about? Who is the Democratic Party? No, but John Carl's not. He doesn't have the wherewithal to ask such a question. Let's let George go again here. Sorry.
And John, in the end, President Biden really had no choice. It's almost as if in the days since the debate, the Democratic Party held another primary.
Absolutely, George. No choice at all. He was left as the leader of a party that no longer wanted him as the leader. So you had the entire elected leadership. You had the basically the elder statesmen of the party. I mean, basically, Obama never came out publicly, but it was clear what he thought needed to be done. Speaker. Pelosi, this was something he just absolutely had to do. And, now the party is breathing a sigh of relief. We don't know what's going to happen in this race, but you can tell what Donald Trump thinks. And he's obviously, it's been scrambled. He was headed towards what he thought was a certain victory against Joe Biden. Now you see an all-out meltdown in his posts overnight. They're worried about a race that they now can't predict.
I again, with this narrative that Donald Trump is melting down, am I the only one who doesn't see that meltdown that these people see, these New York Democrats like Joe Scarborough and John Carl and George Stephanopoulos? But did you notice he also said the party is now breathing a sigh of relief? Who are they talking about? Do they mean Democrats like Jim and Jane Democrat who live in Iowa, who voted for Biden in the caucus and the primaries? Is that who they're talking about? Or are they talking about party elders? Are they talking about leadership? Are they talking about Obama and Chuck Schumer? The party is breathing a sigh of relief. By the way, that's the same party who weeks ago told us that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack and behind closed doors, he's got a command of the issues. And any suggestion that he's lost a step is a cheap fake. That's the same party that's now breathing a sigh of relief that he's gone once and for all, finally. So what are the Democrats about to do? Well, let's break this down because it is going to be a fascinating thing to watch. And yes, major power players are coalescing behind Kamala Harris, but that doesn't mean much, actually. She needs 1,986, I believe, delegates at the convention to win a majority and get the nomination. She currently has about 500 pledged to her. That's less than a third of what she needs. Now, how does she get from point A to point B? It's not pretty. In fact, it's kind of messy. This morning, Greg Kilmeade on Fox and Friends had a very informative breakdown.
So the question you have and your family has and your friends have is what comes next? Now that President Biden shocked us all by saying he's stepping aside and endorsing Vice President Harris. Democratically, let's take a look at exactly the timeline of events. We know about the announcement at 1:46 in the afternoon.
All right, I just take issue with that graphic real fast here, guys. Fox is going out, extending themselves here. Biden steps aside willingly. That's not objective truth. That is not verified fact. You can speculate. You could make that assumption, I suppose, but it's just saying. I'm just saying. All right. I just repeat myself.
Biden then, after a first page saying, I'm out, he says, put my support behind Harris, which means they get the Biden-Harris money already in a coffer. She works the phones, and she's got about over 30 senators, Democratic senators, willing to support her, 153 as of this morning, 153 Democratic congresspeople. She needs 300 signatures to officially become a nominee. That will not be a problem. When it gets to the convention, they put the nominees out there and they said, do you have a vote? And if she gets over 1,986 votes, she gets through. If not, it goes to the superdelegates. They start again. The only other person I know who seems to be thinking about putting their name in is Joe Manchin. The other question we have is, what does she stand for? Well, we know this. Push for voting rights. It went absolutely nowhere. A few Zoom calls, she lost interest. How the borders are, she's been there just one time. She wanted to get to the root causes of it. Every single year, the three major countries with illegal immigrants coming to our border has risen.
Actually, let me add to that the current head of the Border Patrol says that he has never received a phone call from Kamala Harris, the border czar, in the year that he's been in the job. And of course, his predecessor, the previous head of the Border Patrol, never heard from the border czar. Also, I should point out that since this broadcast earlier today, Joe Manchin has now come out and basically said that he's not looking to be the nominee for president, although his language was somewhat squirrely, so you never know with Joe Manchin. All right, and then this final thing has to do with her position on abortion. Now he turns to a person, and I love the name of this guy's group is Delegates Are Democracy. This is a person who is working with the Democrat delegates. He's a Democrat. And the name of the group is Delegates Are Democracy. In other words, the delegates, the 3,800 delegates who are assembling in Chicago for this convention to decide who the nominee is going to be, that is democracy. They are democracy. That's what democracy means now. It's 3,800 specially chosen special interest union members and big donors who get together in Chicago and decide who's going to be the nominee. So you tell your friends, your Democrat friends, your aunt, your uncle, your grandma who thought Bobby Kennedy's hair was dreamy, and so she still votes Democrat all the time because that's just what we do. That's who we are. We vote Democrat. We've been lifelong Democrats. We're going to keep voting Democrats. Just let them know that their voice will not be heard here, and the Democrat Party is okay with that because delegates are democracy. Let's hear what he has to say about this process.
How close is Harris to locking this up? Well, less than 24 hours after finding out she'd be up for it?
Well, our organization has spoken to hundreds of delegates in recent days all across the country. There is certainly a lot of appreciation for President Biden and his service and the decision that he made to withdraw from the race, and also a lot of excitement about Kamala Harris being the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party.
All right, so let's think about this, though. Nancy Pelosi has not said anything. Barack Obama has indicated we should have an open process. Hakeem Jeffries just praised Biden, and Chuck Schumer's been invisible. Does that matter? Does that show you where the party's at?
Well, President Obama is exactly right. We should have an open process, and that's exactly what we have. Any Democrat in the country, including me or any of my Democratic friends, could put their name forward right now, call 300 delegates, get them to sign a piece of paper, and be on the ballot for the delegates at the convention in August. So we have an open process. We just don't yet have a competitive process. I think that speaks to a lot of the vice president's strengths.
You mean competitive as in it's not close? You mean no one legitimately has a shot at beating her? Is that what you mean by competitive?
Well, look, as I just said, any Democrat in the country could put their name forward. That includes senators, that includes governors.
Right.
There's some really great talent on the Democratic bench. They could be out there right now asking for delegate votes. But what we see instead is them saying that they've met Kamala Harris, they've worked with her, they like her, and they think she's the right nominee for the party.
So here, take a look at the state delegations right now that are in her corner. New Hampshire in, North Carolina, South Carolina in, Tennessee is in. And as I mentioned, you got about 30 plus Democratic senators. Is it important for Democrats to look like this is an open process? Because they had 14 million people already pick a candidate, and they were told without their say-so that candidate's no longer eligible because of party pressure. Doesn't that look terrible for the Democratic voter that cared and came out in the primaries?
Well, I've been surprised that President Trump has been saying that exact talking point for a guy that wants to make America great again. This is how we picked presidents for centuries. You know, I'm a Democrat. My favorite president ever is President Abraham Lincoln, a Republican. Do you know how many votes he got in the primaries? Exactly 0. We didn't have primaries back then. We had a convention. The delegates chose a great Republican candidate, put him forward, and he served as one of our best presidents ever. That's the process that is in place in the Democratic Party today, the process that you're going to see in August in Chicago.
Right. You're saying the Lincoln process with the Republican Party is the process that the Democrats will have in play today?
That's exactly right. The delegates are from all over the country.
Okay.
They come to a convention, they have a roll call, and they have a vote. President Lincoln was not the top choice of the
You could have
convention.
saved a lot of money.
1860.
You could have saved a lot of money and a lot of time if you just told everyone, we'll pick it at the convention. But it's going to be exciting anyway. Chris Dempsey, thanks so much.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. All right. You know, what he just described there as the process that they're going to go through and how wonderful it is and how it's how we've done it forever in America until recent history. And actually in the last, 80 to 100 years, I think, is when the primary and caucus process. And the reason that they did that was because the people were sick and tired of smoke-filled rooms and people making bargains and deals behind closed doors and then just emerging saying, here, this is your candidate, because there was corruption involved, and the primaries and the caucuses ended up being a more purely democratic process. But what he's describing here is this virtuous, wonderful thing that the Democrats are about to engage in, where representatives from voters from all around the country will get together and they'll vote on behalf of the precincts and districts and counties that they represent. There's a word for that. It's called republicanism. And that's what the Democrats are about to do, while calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy. My friend Chris Plant, radio talk show host, likes to, and TV host on Newsmax, he likes to say, were it not for double standards, Democrats would have no standards at all. But that's where we are. I'm so glad you joined us today. Who knows what tomorrow might bring, but I do know one thing. We'll be here to report it to you, to discuss it with you, to analyze it with you, and to laugh at it. Because if we ain't laughing these days, we are crying. Keep the faith, folks. We got this. We just got to keep focused. No meltdowns, no fear. Straight ahead, right to Election Day. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.